Chaim Brovender, Parsha Shiur of the WebYeshiva. We're going to talk a little bit tonight about the Parsha of Balaam. I would like to talk about Balaam because he remains a mystery to me, Balaam. Just to remind ourselves of the sequence of matters that took place in the Parsha, Balaam is introduced to us as an asset in a military exercise that Balak wants to organize. Balak goes and hires Balaam to act as artillery. In those days, there were curses. I mean, it's very similar to what goes on today. Today, it's we attack with drones and other kinds of flying things. And in those days, they were going to attack with the prophetic ability that Balaam had to curse. Finally, after some discussion with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Balaam decides to go. On the way, we have the story of Balaam and his ass. The ass suddenly began talking, and it's hard to know what exactly the purpose of the ass is in the story of Balaam. I mean, if we didn't have the ass, we would still have pretty much the same story. The third part of the story of Balaam is Balaam attempting to curse Bnei Yisrael and being unsuccessful. Instead of cursing Bnei Yisrael, he blesses them. Balak, of course, is annoyed about this. After all, he's paying for service, and he's not getting it. Finally, the last part of the story of Balaam is when Balaam says, look, I know that I have not been able to give you what you wanted, but I could give you advice which would enable you to succeed in doing what you wanted to do. The Balak said, what's the advice, So Balaam said, send young girls to convince the Jewish men that they should serve idolatry. And that'll work. And it did work. So we have these four kind of sections to the story of Balaam. There's the introduction, Balaam hired by the elders that Balak sent. We have the trip that Balaam took on the way to meeting with Balak. And on that trip, we have the story of the talking ass. Then Balaam, being hired and organized, tries to curse Bnei Yisrael 3 times. Each time, he ends up blessing them instead of cursing them. And all of this is a kind of a mystery. I mean, who was Balaam? I mean, why did he have such recognition from HaKadosh Baruch Hu? And why was he so willing to take a stand against God's original directive to him? Don't go. And Balaam said, but. And God said, okay, you can go. I mean, do I have to relate to any of this? I mean, I know it's one of the parashiyot, and I know Chazal said that Moshe Rabbeinu wrote the Parsha of Balaam. That's like a profound statement that they make. But I'd like to look, with your permission, at the first of these 4 sections. Who is Balaam? Can we discover it from what's written in the Torah itself? So pasuk, the first pasuk bet says, "Vayar Balak ben Zippor." Let me just get the. Maybe it'll be helpful. Vayar Balak ben Sipor Balak. Et kol asher atzah Yisrael Emori. Balak had reason to be afraid that Yisrael would do to him what they did to the Emori. Emori is another nation, a nation. Vayagar Moab, they were afraid. Whatever the reason, they were afraid. Vayakatz Moab b'nei Yisrael, and Moab was in a difficult situation. Pasuk Dalet. Vayome Moab was nicknamed Midian, so Moab got together with the elders of Midian. Atay lachachu akahalet kol svivotenu. They'll uproot all of our plantings. Kol svivotenu. Kilchochat shoret Yericha sadel. It'll be like you let loose a bunch of oxen on the field and they eat it up. Ubalak ben Sipor melech leMoab ba'iti, and Balak was the king of Moab. Okay, they have a problem. So now they're going to solve the problem. Pasuk Hey, Ayishlach malachim el Balaam ben Ba'or. This is the solution to the problem. These are the weapons that Balak knows about. So Vayishlach malachim el Balaam ben Ba'or Pitora, el Pitora, Asher el lahar eretz v'nei Amon likrot lo le'mor, hinei am yatzam. So he tells Balaam the story. Hinei ha'am yatzam mitzrayim, hinei kisa adei haaretz. There's like a lot of them. They're all over. V'hu yoshev mimuli, and they are kind of getting themselves ready for battle opposite me. I see them. Then pasuk vav, v'ata lechana ara li'etam, curse them for me, ha'am hazeh, ki atzum hu mimeni, because they're very big. I won't be able to fight, and I won't be victorious in the fight. Ulai uchal nakebo, maybe I'll be able to beat them down with your help. V'agarshenu min haaretz, and I'll drive them out of this land. Ki yadati. What do you think about this? Ki yadati et asher tevarech mevorach. The people you bless are blessed. Mevorach v'asher ta'or, you are. So I wanted just to know, is this true? Is the Torah telling me that this is true, that Balaam can do this? That he's a real curser and a real blesser? Right? Is that what I'm supposed to believe? Let's see the Kiyadati. Kiyadati Begomer Al Yedei Milchemet Sichon. Yedei Milchemet Sichon. מלחמת סיכון שעזרתו להכות את מואב. Okay, it sounds like it's real. Sounds like Rashi is saying to us that it's a real thing. Balaam can do it. So we understand if Balaam can do it, if he can bless and he can curse, then that means that it was important for HaKadosh Baruch Hu to force him to say what the blessing when he wanted to say the curse. But it's inside of him, inside of Balaam. He can curse, he can bless. He has that capacity. So it becomes a story of what he's going to say. Balak says curse, and Hashem says bless. But somehow it sounds as though Balaam has some kind of independent ability. He has some sort of independent ability. We look at Pasuk Tet, Vayomer Alehem, Linu po halayla, and so Balaam says to the Zekenim, stay over tonight, Vashivoti etchem davar, kasher yedaber Hashem elai, vayeshvu sarei Moab in Balaam, so they're friendly. He wants to do business with them, but he needs approval, divine approval. Pasuk Tet says, "Vayavo Elokim el Balaam vayomer mi ha'anashim ha'ele imach." Okay, sometimes God opens the conversation in that way. Of course, he knows who they are, but it's a way of saying what's doing, how you're feeling, what's happening. So we see this kind of friendly position that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has with Balaam. Mi anashim ha'ele imach. Pasuk Yud, Vayomer Balaam el Elokim Balak ben Zippor melech Moab shalach elai Balaam. Balak sent them to me. Pasuk Yud Aleph. Hinei ha'am hayotzei miMitzrayim vayichatz et ein haaretz ata lecha kabali oto ulai uchal lilachem bo v'gerashtiv. So he explains to HaKadosh Baruch Hu what the situation is. They want him to go and to curse Bnei Yisrael, and then he would be able to drive them away. Which is that's a pretty direct statement. Lo telechi mahem. Rejected. Request rejected. So it was like Balaam is a prophet. He has an option. He can bless or he can curse. He has some sort of free will in that kind of way of thinking about things. Lo telechi mahem, lo ta'or ta'am. You're not going to curse anybody. Ki baruch hu. It's not a choice that you have, because this nation is blessed. Ki baruch hu. Lo ta'or ta'am. You don't have that option. Ki baruch hu. I mean, I know HaKadosh Baruch Hu says you're a prophet and you have power, and sometimes it works depending on whatever the situation is. But in this case, lo ta'or ta'am, that you're not going to be able to do. Vayakom Balaam baboker vayomer el sorei Balak, lechu el artzechem, ki me'ein Hashem letiti lahalochi machem. Pasuk Yudalet, vayakumu sorei Moab, vayavo el Balak, vayomru me'ein Balaam halochi mana. They went back to Balak and they said Balaam disagreed. So Balak thought that it was a negotiation problem. You've heard of that? Having negotiation problem. You figure you just up the ante a little, and that's what happened. Pasuk Tet Vav. Pasuk Tet Vav. Vayosev od Balak shaloach sarim rabim v'nichbadim me'ela. He sent higher level officers. Vayavo el Balaam vayomru lo koach כוחו אמר בלעם בן ציפור אל נא תמנע מהלוך, אלא תימנע מהלוך אליי. So it's a negotiation. Yes, come, don't come. But God said, don't come. What are they negotiating? Ki kabed ha'am hazeh. Ki kabed ha'am hazeh. This is a difficult problem. Vayan Bil'am vayomer el abdei Balak im yitain lo Balak v'lo beito kesef b'zav. They give me all the money in the world. Lo uchal la'abor et pi Hashem Elohai lasot ktana gdola. There you have it. Bilam understands what he's being restricted, that there are restrictions. You can't do whatever you want. So especially you need, in order to curse somebody, he needs support from heaven. God has to be on his side. You can't just support and just go and curse somebody and expect it to work. And we were talking about an event that Balak would probably then afterwards go and challenge the people of Israel to a battle to see if it worked. So Bilam is not going to get himself into that trouble. He'll lose sight of his credentials. So look at Pasuk Kaf. Vayavo Elokim el Bilam Laila. Vayomer lo im likro lecha bao anashim kum lech itam. V'achet hadavar she'adaber elecha oto ta'aseh. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu says to Bilam, look, if it's a monetary matter, they're going to give you a lot of money. I don't want to limit your ability to earn a living. Then you can go with them. Go with them and take the money. But I want you to know that v'achet hadavar asher adaber elecha oto ta'aseh. So there's a prophet who's a prophet of the Goyim, who knows that his power of prophecy comes from God. And therefore, he has like an offer of a job, but he could only get that kind of position and do that kind of work if God approves of it. And so he asked for God's approval. Barak sent two groups of a mission of two groups of wise men to seduce Bilam into this job. And finally, after the second time, for some reason, God approves of it. I mean, we know that it could be that the approval that God gave to Bilam is because God would make sure that there would be bracha and not klala. Bracha and not klala. But it's a little complicated. I mean, after all, HaKadosh Baruch Hu had Moshe Rabbeinu. He's right there. He's in the camp. But why can't he put him in charge of bracha? I have to have Matobo Alecha Yaakov Mishkelotecha Yisrael from Bilam. I don't want it from Bilam. Okay, Chazal say that Moshe Rabbeinu wrote the Parsha of Bilam as though there would be a question. I mean, like, who's Bilam? What is it that we're supposed to understand from this kind of story? Remember that pasuk? Pasuk Vav, Ki Yadati, you see it's underlined in red, Ki Yadati et asher tevarech mivorach, v'asher ta'or you are. That's not Balaam. Balaam said, whatever God tells me to say, that's what I'm going to say. Ki Yadati et asher tevarech mivorach, that's how they compliment Balaam. There's a bracha and there's a klola. So the truth is that there's something about the notion of nevuah, of being able to determine the future in some manner or other, or to decide the future. We assume that if a Navi, Yirmiyahu, a Navi, if Hashem says to Yirmiyahu, a Navi, B'tzafon tipatach ha'ra'ah, angel will come against Bnei Yisrael from the north. The north is Babel, Ashur, and then Babel. Okay, we understand. It's true. Because that's what prophecy is. It's the reliability on truth. That's Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu was the greatest of the prophets. Because we can depend on Moshe Rabbeinu to give us the truth. The truth equals the Torah. That was what prophecy was. But there's a lesser form of prophecy. It's a lesser form of prophecy of Nevi'im, the prophecy of Ketuvim, Daniel, Mishlei. These are books, prophetic works, but they're not prophecy. So is Balaam prophecy? I mean, Chazal call him a Navi. What are we supposed to be learning from Balaam? Well, I think we could say that for some reason HaKadosh Baruch Hu thought it was important that everybody should have access to prophecy. Now that access that we have to prophecy can either be, positive or negative. That connection to prophecy. We can either get the truth or not get the truth, but we see that there's a certain stress in this situation because Hashem said that the davar asher daber elecha oto ta'aseh. What did he think, Balaam? What was he going to do? He was going to say something that God denied, that God wouldn't allow? And maybe a footnote about the Balaam's ass. That the way we understand things, we tend to compare them, to make them into mishalim. It's easier for us if we can compare something to something else. Asher dever elecha oto ta'aseh. This was a limit. In other words, Balaam thought that he was in charge. HaKadosh Baruch Hu said to him, "Et hadavar asher daber elecha oto ta'aseh." You're not in charge. You're not in charge. In fact, you're very similar to your ass, who's also not in charge, but talks about what's fair and what's unfair. It wasn't what Balaam was trying to be. He wasn't trying to be senseless like the ass. So I have to tell you that I saw that the Rav Tzadok HaKohen in the Tzidkas HaTzadik, you know that Chassidut, and certain kinds of Chassidut, which we won't go into right now, so Chassidut, they wondered where always there was a problem. Where did the Ra come from? How come we have a choice to be good or bad? I understand it's good to have a choice, but if there's a choice between good and bad, so that means I could choose bad. So how do I do that? How could it be that the God created the world, that the world is a reflection of the divine in some way, and the divine is certainly good. So where does the bad in me come from exactly? So Rav Tzadok came up with this idea that I asked them to print up something that was a mistake, so I don't have the beginning of it, but I'll read to you what he says. It's kol hakochotan, kol kochotan tuot b'kol nefesh miYisrael. Everybody is born with great potential. Ein lachshov shehu ra gamur. So that potential, the fact that somebody could become a bad person, doesn't mean that he's got bad in him when he's born. Shetzarich liyot hafachol, that he has to try to undo it. Ki ein lecha shum mida v'koach she'ein batzad tov gam kein. And this is the idea that there's no such thing as Ra. There's no such thing as Ra. You could say, like going to war. That's really a terrible thing. When you go to war, you're going to do terrible things. You're going to kill people. You're going to create misery. War is absolutely terrible. And yet, sometimes the Torah says you have to legislate war. And then he goes on and says, the opposite is also true. When a person does something good, it doesn't mean that he's only good. The fight against evil goes on, even if you're doing good things. And he has an interesting proof of that. An interesting proof of that is Shaul HaMelech, the King Saul. King Saul went to fulfill the Torah obligation to destroy Amalek. And he did. But he spared the lives of the kings and some animals. And so Shmuel Hanavi, the prophet Shmuel, said, "What you do? You didn't follow the rules." What did Shaul say? Do you remember? Shaul said to Kadosh Baruch Hu, and Shaul said to Shmuel, it was my feeling of mercy. I was just supposed to kill them all. I couldn't do it. I was merciful. Just then you could say this is not what Shaul said, but the implication is, just as you, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, was merciful with the Egel HaZahav, with the golden calf. That's when mercy was brought into the world. So I was also merciful. So the way that Rav Tzadok understands that is that kind of interplay. Shmuel says, you did something wrong. Shaul said, I was just merciful. What did I do wrong? So the Rav Tzadok says that just like bad things that you do could really come from a good source, that inside of you there's good, the same thing is true in the opposite way, that you could do something good and it comes from something bad. And so Shmuel said, why'd you do it? And Shaul said, I was merciful. And Shmuel said, you're going to be punished for that. Because the higher order of goodness is accepting the divine command. And you have to always go for the higher order, not for the lower order. So when we say that the nations of the world needed a prophet, they needed to know that within themselves there's also goodness that could be expressed, even though they're not always acting in a proper manner. There's still room for improvement. That's Balaam. Balaam proved, though, that he was not there for improvement. And he advised the king to send the young girls to seduce the men to idolatry. So even though he blessed them, he was able to exercise somehow the evil within himself in spite of that. In spite of that was the free will that he represented, which exists for everybody in creation, and not only for the Jews. Okay, we talked a little bit about the Balaam. All the best. Have a good Shabbos. Be well.
Bye.
Thank you, Rabbi Brovender.